A story that I actually haven't heard just about anybody report on. So this week, I don't know if you follow AI news or anything like that, but the computer company, computer chip company, Nvidia, this week revealed a new video game tool called DLSS 5. And what this tool does is it enhances the lighting capabilities of certain video games. So that's what it is. It's AI used to enhance video games. And some people took this to the extreme, as you'll see in this video that I'm going to clip out now.
But I think we needed extra time to talk with our teammates and come to a consensus about what we're dealing with here, good and bad, before we put something on the record, and we didn't do that. Equally on the record, though, as emotive a subject as AI is, you're really not going to make your point effectively by actively threatening or sending death threats to the DF team. This is crossing the line and totally unacceptable.
Okay, so as you saw in that video, these people, and they're fairly reputable in the PC industry regarding their tech reviews, analyzing software, stuff like that. And they were receiving death threats, not for actually developing this technology, for covering it, which is absolutely insane. Like, this is supposed to be something that you go on, you have some time, some free time, you want to go play video games. Okay, you want your game to look a little bit nicer, you turn on this setting and it looks nicer. Okay, that's it, and you don't even have to use it. Like, that's the craziest thing to me. These people believe that it was okay to send death threats to these reviewers for literally no reason. But if I had to guess, like I said, they didn't, like you saw in the video, they didn't really talk about who was doing it, which I think is good that they didn't explain that. But I think that it's fairly reasonable to assume that these were younger American or younger people, probably Western, just because of the content. It's PC content, and a lot of other countries don't necessarily have access to these tools, access to computers essentially. But let's dive into this. So I do want to bring up a YouGov survey. I've brought this up before. I haven't brought up these particular points, but this was the political violence survey that occurred right after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And the first graph that I want to point out is that older Americans are more concerned about political violence than young adults. And this is, young adults is in this survey defined as 18 to 29. Then there's 30 to 44, 45 to 64, and 65 plus. Those are the groups. And if you look at this, this is responses of somewhat of a problem, not very much of a problem, not a problem, and not sure, are not shown. So this is only people who believed that political violence was a problem. We have 50% of 18 to 29-year-olds believe that, 55% of 30 to 44-year-olds, 63% of 45 to 64-year-olds, and 69% of 65 plus believe that political violence is a problem. So younger Americans already say that political violence isn't a problem in the first place, which is crazy. But the next survey that I think is even more shocking that I want to bring to your attention is this one right here, that political violence is significantly more likely to support political violence or using violence to achieve political goals, which I know this is a little bit different from what I was talking about with AI, but as I'll get into in a little bit, I don't, even though AI isn't necessarily political, to Gen Z it is, and I'll get into that. But I just want to go over these numbers first. So we have 22% of 18 to 29-year-olds believe that violence for political goals can be justified. This is in comparison to 12% of 30 to 44-year-olds, which is, so that's double the amount or double the likelihood that somebody in Gen Z would actually think that political violence is justified. Quadruple the likelihood that somebody 45 to 64 would believe political violence is justified, and nearly seven, or a little bit over 7 times more likely than 65 plus, which is, that's a clear indicator that something is wrong with young Americans that is leading them to believe that violence can be justified for certain goals. So let's actually get into this. And to me, what the biggest reason for this is because young Americans aren't invested in our current systems. And this is blatantly clear because I have a few articles pulled up that I will put in my description. So the first one is that Gen Z growing up, we have been consistently told that if you graduate high school and graduate college, you're guaranteed to get a job, you'll be successful, you'll be able to own a home, you can have a family whenever you want, and all this stuff. But in reality, that's not actually happening. So, right here, as Richard Mansfield, an economics professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, put it, Gen Z has a whole lot of clouds on the horizon. Based on the Federal Reserve Bank of New York's analysis of census data, 41.2% of graduates in their early and mid 20s were underemployed in March, meaning they were working jobs that don't typically require a bachelor's degree. That's up from 38.9% in December, and Ivy alums aren't immune. In January, the Wall Street Journal reported that job placement at more than a dozen top MBA programs was the worst in recent memory last year. Notably, Harvard told the Journal that 23% of its job seeking MBAs who graduated in spring 2024 were still looking for work 3 months after leaving campus, a figure that was up from 20% in the prior year and more than double what it was in 2022. Higher education may be known for its historical role as a path to prestige and higher pay, but Gen Zers are wondering whether it's worth it anymore. So Gen Z was fed all this advice. You would go into debt to go to college to potentially have a higher income. But now that they're actually graduating college, they're not finding it. They're actually having trouble finding jobs. And I personally experienced this. Like when I graduated from college, I only had two job offers, and one of them I didn't get until about 2 months after my graduation. My first one was luckily I got prior to graduation, but this is the reality of the situation: is that American or young Americans were told something and it's not coming true. So now they're tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and with nothing to show for it. So that's causing problems. And then, of course, another big issue here is that AI is taking a lot of jobs from them, which is how it ties back to that AI video that I was talking about. Even though that is for video games, it's more representative of the general hatred towards AI that a lot of Gen Zers feel because it's taking their jobs. And one of the biggest things that I've actually heard personally is the concern about artists in terms of AI, because AI will feed off of the data that's given to it. So when AI generates art, it tends to be a combination of other artwork that it's seen, and people believe that it's going to put actual artists out of business, which that it's definitely a problem, but that doesn't justify violence in terms of it. But I mean, even going back to things that people that younger Americans were told would happen, uh, Gen Z can't really buy homes. So this is a 2024 survey where we have approximately 60% of Gen Z is worried that they may never own a home. Approximately 98% say that they face barriers to home ownership, especially regarding high prices and high interest rates. And approximately 79% of homeowners that are members of Gen Z don't think the average member of their generation can afford a home. So, again, this is part of the American dream. The American dream is being able to succeed, have a family, own a home, and live free. And younger Americans aren't getting that. And this is why they're turning to more radical ideologies and why they're more willing to support violence, because they believe that the system as it exists is fighting against them. And this is actually best illustrated in this article right here, The Lost Generation, where we can see the alienation of young men, especially young white men, because DEI was institutionalized racism or institutionalized discrimination. I'm not going to say racism because it did impact people on various scales, uh, obviously because of the DEI hierarchy, where if you were either a straight man, if you were straight, if you were white, and if you were a man, those were all factors counted against you because there was this big push to diversify organizations when that doesn't actually help in a lot of instances. Because what you're doing is you have, let, let's, just as an example, let's take some business. Let's say you're working at the New York Times, and I don't have any numbers on me, but let's say that you have 100% white people, and you have, let's say, 55% men, 45% women, or let's make it 60% men, 40% women. These people all got into a boardroom around 2014, 2015, and decided that they wanted more diversity. So they wanted people of different skin colors, different sexes. So they wanted to make it more equal. But what they don't realize is that by making it more equal, you're intentionally discriminating against certain individuals to do so. Uh, so let's say you have 5 black applicants. This is similar to what I talked about a few weeks ago regarding the small women and minority-owned businesses law that's potentially being passed in Virginia right now, where you're essentially limiting yourself in what you can get in terms of actual skills without, just because you're focused strictly on aspects of a person that they cannot change. Like, you can't change your skin color, you can't change your sex, even though some people want to think you can, you can't. You can't change this stuff, and you're actively discriminating against people for it. And this has really hurt an entire generation of young men. It was mostly millennials and Gen Z, although it is finally starting to get a little bit better from what I'm hearing from a few people. But the institutions were deliberately against them. So it's pretty clear that they may be against it. But even in terms of just politics, not even just the overarching systems, if you look in politics too, only 19% of young Americans trust the federal government, which, to be fair, I think that's a good thing. That one question, 19% should trust the federal government. I think it should be a little bit lower than that because the federal government does a lot of bad things. They do some good things, but they do a lot of bad things too. So I'm not particularly mad about that. Only 18% trust Congress to do the right thing, which I do think that is problematic because Congress are the ones passing the laws, and they're supposed to be representing us, we the people, and they're not. So there's that. 23% trust the president, and this was taken in spring 2025. So I'm not entirely certain if this was because Trump is president or if this is just the presidential role in and of itself. But either way, 23% support for the president, who is the figurehead of the country. And then 29% trust the Supreme Court, which is even crazier because the Supreme Court upholds the laws in our system, and people don't even trust them to do a good job. So all of this combines and leads people to be against the systems that hold it up. And this is something that I'm personally fighting against because America is the greatest country in the world and in history too. I mean, we are all lucky to live here and have the freedoms that we do and not have to see war on our beachfronts. Like, we don't have to see people dying in our streets from these conflicts literally half a world away, which I'm extremely grateful for, and I'm grateful for the people who did that. And we need more of that in Americans, and that's one of the reasons why I started this show, because I wanted people, especially young Americans, to actually see that this country is great. And I think the best way to do that is to get people invested. So we need to bring people into politics. We need to show them how they can interact. We need to get politicians actually implementing the will of the people. We need to get people jobs. So we need to increase the ability for people to get jobs. We need to increase the purchasing power of the American, so that way they live in a better economy. So that way it is more possible for people to purchase homes, especially younger Americans. But in the absence of it, we get what we have now, where you have the radical left, which is increasingly populated by younger Americans, because they believe that liberalism hasn't gone far enough, so it needs to go further, and this is why they're in favor of socialism or anti-capitalism, as some of them will say. But they they're pushing further because they don't like the way that things are. And at the same time, we have on the right side, like with people like Nick Fuentes. I really don't like naming names on this show just because I feel like when I do that, people will tend to investigate, and I don't want to give them any extra audience that they don't deserve. But there are people like him that they're pushing for a significantly a more collectivist society, like what the left wants, except they want it to be more collectivist and collectivist, nationalist, and populist. That's the term that I was looking for. They want it to be more populist, collectivist, and nationalist, which inherently isn't a good thing just because of the collectivist part. Because collectivism has shown time and time again that it doesn't work. But this is the problem when you have two reactionary forces fighting each other. So you have the left that is reacting to the failures of liberalism, and you have the far right that is reacting to the failures of the far left. And neither of them is correct. What we need is we need a return to traditionalism. Prior to a lot of this liberalism that we've seen, especially in the 1900s, because we made a lot of policy decisions back then that ultimately led to the problems we're having now.